Chapter 49, Theory of Tibetan Medicine, The Four Elements. In previous chapter, the medicine hall and the Tibetan medicine of the four academic halls of Buddhism were introduced. The nature of Tibetan medicine is quite similar to traditional Chinese medicine, which is to say that they are not scientific from the perspective of Western medicine. As the methodology of Western medicine sets a high value on effect validation and quantifying, the definition of scientific in Western medicine is measurable, quantitative, repeatable, which can't be accomplished for either Tibetan or traditional Chinese medicine. Furthermore, the standard on scientific and effective of Western medicine is called whether double-blind trials of random assignment are successfully tested, which is fundamentally different from Tibetan and traditional Chinese medicine. Tibetan and traditional Chinese medicine will adopt different therapies depending on each individual, whereas Western medicine asserts randomized, double-blind. As the Chinese saying goes, opinions differ from each other. Regardless of this, therapeutic effect judges. I've introduced one philosophical school in the course, A Brief Introduction on Philosophy, which is the skeptical school of Pyrrhonism. It was founded by physicians, which implies that the philosophical position of skepticism holders are mainly physicians. As the pioneering figure, Sextus Empiricus stated at his times that the scientific nature was always suspended to judge in the whole process of treatment. The only phenomenon you may observe is that the disease is cured by this is ineligible to lead to a positive to the scientific nature for the therapeutic process. Since you are not able to validate each step happened, no matter it is traditional Chinese or Western medicine. However, the most critical thing to the patient is the therapeutic outcome, right? It is quite understandable if one is ill ever. Regardless the therapy method, I don't feel well currently, and my expectation is to be suffering no more. That is the only and simple aim I am seeking. It should be emphasized on the other way, medicine and religion are essential two branches derived from the same source, which is the primitive witchcraft. The primitive witchcraft produced two professions. One was witch and the other was witch physician, which is cascaded to the lineage of layman and the theologian. The theologian was then subdivided into three paths: religion, philosophy, and science. And science was actually split from philosophy, starting from Aristotle. The lineage of witch physician, however, was quite pure and consistent. It has been developed with the profession of physicians all the way along. Hence, it has been debated from the ancestors that there was and is no absolute science on the matter of medicine. The similarity of traditional Chinese and Tibetan medicine lies in its similar theory basis. The traditional Chinese medicine theory basis is the Confucian theory, while the Tibetan medicine, Buddhist theory. The Confucian theory includes the philosophical view of the theory of the union of man and nature and feminine, masculine and the five elements. Yin-yang wuxing. It is often quoted nowadays like feudal society. Well, these so-called feudalist superstitions are, as a matter of fact, derived from the Confucianism. The Confucianism owns its theological system, for example, the theory of Confucianist divination, fortune-telling by using the 8 trigrams, yin-yang and the 5 elements, etc., all of which belong to the Confucianism. This branch was just not propagated later on, and the Confucianism nowadays is limited to the classical pure Chinese culture. However, as a matter of fact, half of the knowledge of the Confucianism is of feudalist superstitions. The philosophical view of the union of man and nature plus the theory yin-yang and the 5 elements forms the theory basis of the traditional Chinese medicine, whereas the Tibetan medicine holds the philosophical view that all phenomena arise in dependence upon conditions, plus Mahabhuta, the four elements. These two are both derived from Buddhism. We've elaborated that the view of all phenomena arise in dependence upon conditions, which certainly belongs to Buddhism. It is not necessary to explain too much. The other view is the four elements, which is corresponding to the yin-yang and the five elements of the Confucianism. Well, theory of the four elements of Buddhism refer to the earth, water, fire, and wind, which comprise the world. This is why it is stated that the traditional Chinese and Tibetan medicine share the similar cultural basis. In other words, traditional Chinese medicine is the Confucianist medicine, while the Tibetan medicine, Buddhist medicine. Let's elaborate on the theory basis on the Tibetan medicine to account for the reason that it is the Buddhist medicine, namely the philosophical view mentioned the foregoing and the theory of the four elements. First, Tibetan medicine divides the human body into two parts, function and substance, which are the contemporary words, though they had the terms of its own indeed in the past. The underlying meaning is conveyed anyway. What does it mean then? For instance, you have a hand. With the physical hand, you may grasp things, right? This is the function of your hand. Still, the question is suspended. Why is it divided in that way? Here comes the critical point. If you were dead, your hand as a substance still exists, right? However, the function of grasping things does not exist anymore, as you are dead and your hand cannot move at all. In other words, the function works because you are alive. Or it may put in this way, the body, which is a substance, has the function is because you are alive. All the body organs of human keep unchanged, regardless dead or alive. You may breathe as long as you live, but the organs are the same despite you are dead or alive. Then why can't the living person breathe? Hence, this is how the Tibetan define the illness or disease, which is whether one has the function or whether the function work completely well. Is it understandable? In other words, if your material body is complete and your function also works well, you are not ill. If your material body is complete, but your function does not work completely, for example, your hand cannot move, which means the hand loses its function, you are ill. Thus, whether your function is complete or not is the critical point that the Tibetan medicine judge the illness. Then, upon the division of function and the material of human body, Tibetan medicine does a further cascading for these two respectively. Function is divided into 3 principles, while substance is divided into 7 categories. Let's articulate the 3 principles of function first. Tibetan medicine think these 3 principles are wrong, Makris Pa, and Badkan. They are the terms transliterated to Chinese from Tibetan. You may know what they really mean with a corresponding term in Chinese. Upon the 3 translation, Rang is wind or qi. The flowing wind with life within the body is qi. Understand? Hence, the first principle or function of human body is the wind with life. The driver that human can breathe is dominated by the wind with life, which means flux. As that, the wind is called wind due to its flux, right? The wind has life. It thus flows. Besides the flux, it is also the qi that dominates not only your breath but also your activities. Namely, all the ability to move is controlled by rang. For instance, your blood is cycling. Upon a sudden cutting, blood is spurted since the blood is cycling, right? This is also a kind of move. All the motions of the 5 senses include food decomposing, water absorbing, excretion, urinating, and other physical activities of your body are supported by the flux of the wind, namely the dynamic energy of run. A movable wind drives all the organic activities of your body, and it is because you are alive. The functions are demonstrated by all the activities, just like a gust of endless wind steers you. Blood, vision, audition. These motion abilities are managed by the run. How about the second principle? Makrispa. What is Makrispa? Upon translation, it means fire. What is the function of fire? It precedes heat. That's why body temperature is detected. The observation of the Tibetan medicine is the direct observation. If you were dead, the function is gone, and so is the body heat, as the dead loses its function of fire. When you are alive, your body certainly has heat. Hence, fire means generating. To summarize, run means flowing while fire generating. Let's take an example using metaphor. You have heat as long as you have fire, but can fire be ignited in oven? You have to put coal into the oven, right? You cannot generate fire from nothingness. Coal or firewood has to be added. Then fire can be generated. With fire, can heat be generated? Hence, fire is in charge of the generating of all things. So, what other things can be generated or produced by fire? Except for heat, fire can generate wisdom, courage, wishes. Everything you seek can be generated by fire. For example, you want to eat food or you want to drink water. The generating of the intentions, thoughts, or desire are all resolved by fire. However, why do you want to eat food and why do you want to drink is related to the process of generating. Fire can only be generated in the oven with cooling, and then heat can be generated accordingly. No generating can take place by emptiness. Hence, the phenomenon exists that you want to eat food or drink water, which is exactly like coals have to be placed into the oven. This is the second principle function. Makraspa. To wrap up this chapter, the first principle of function is run, which is responsible for the flux of physical body, all the motions of human body. The second principle of function, Makraspa, which is fire, is in charge of all generating of the human body. How about the third principle? It is called the Badkan, and then we will elaborate in the next chapter.